The Oak Room at the Plaza, New York is open tonight for one exclusive party. I am Giselle Whitaker, 35 years old, a litigation attorney the media likes to call the corporate hunter. A long table set for 35 guests, and as always, I'm placed at the very end. My younger brother mocked me at my father's retirement party, 35 and still single. What a waste. People murmured. A few giggles rippled through the room. My father raised his glass voice loud and clear. You'll die alone. No husband, no children, no family. My mother sighed, adding another stab. Such a shame for the most beautiful and successful daughter in the family. Everyone nodded, pitying eyes fixed straight on me. I simply smiled, glanced at my watch, 7:42 p.m. The private room's door swung open. A man in a deep navy suit walked in first, followed by a little boy about 6.5 wearing a tiny matching suit. The man smiled politely. Good evening, everyone. I am... Instantly, the entire room fell silent. If you've ever been humiliated by your entire family in front of 35 people just for being single, what happened next will give you chills. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see the bitter ending my family had to face. Brandon refused to hand the microphone back. He waved Courtney up to the little stage. She was 6 months along and beaming in an emerald dress that hugged every curve. The second she reached him, he flipped to the next slide on the projector screen. Court and I just closed on the house in West Lynn, he declared. 7 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, infinity pool right over the river. We take the keys next month. A wave of cheers rolled across the vineyard. Aunt Diane let out an actual whistle. Lauren wasn't about to be left out. She practically dragged Diego up with her and seized the moment. Not trying to one-up anyone, she laughed, but we just locked the kids into Portland International Academy. Tuition is insane, but when your oldest is headed to 8th grade, middle one's already on the select soccer traveling squad, and the youngest is waitlisted for kindergarten, you pay it. Someone at the cousins' table yelled, "That's how you do it," and glasses shot into the air again. Brandon grinned wider and flicked to another video. Also picked up the new Tesla Model X last week. Falcon Wing doors, full self-driving package. Courtney says it parks better than I do. The screen showed the white SUV opening its doors like a spaceship in their new 6-car garage. The crowd went wild, oohing and ahing loud enough to scare the birds from the vines. Dad rose from his chair, eyes shining with pride, and slung an arm around Brandon's shoulders. That right there, he said, voice carrying without a mic house. Family real success. That's the life worth living. The words hit the warm air and settled like a ruling. Mom pressed a hand to her chest, nodding so hard her pearls shook. Lauren leaned toward Aunt Karen's table and kept going. We're taking everyone to Italy next month. 2 weeks on the Amalfi Coast, private villa, chef included. The kids have been doing Duolingo every night so they can order gelato like locals. More applause. Someone started a Shaw family chant, and half the vineyard joined in. I stayed exactly where I was, near the back row of tables, holding my untouched sparkling water. Every glance that slid my way carried the same silent verdict. Look at everything they have. Now look at you. Aunt Karen leaned over to Mom and said just loud enough, "Such a waste of potential. All that education and still comes home to an empty place." Uncle Greg chuckled into his Pinot. "Blueprints don't tuck you in at night. No one asked what kept me in meetings until midnight. No one asked why I disappeared to New York twice a month. No one asked why my inbox never slept. They didn't need to. The picture was already painted for them. Brandon and Lauren had the dream. I had deadlines and an echoing condo." The victory lap lasted another 20 minutes. Brandon bragged about the downtown high-rise deal that paid for the Tesla. Lauren detailed the villa's ocean view terraces. Dad promised Brandon the new 30-foot Boston Whaler as a closing gift. Mom teared up talking about future grandchildren running through that infinity pool. Each new detail landed like another brick on my chest. I kept my face perfectly calm, fingers tight around the glass stem, counting heartbeats, until the exact minute I'd been waiting for all day. Brandon tapped his glass a third time, the sharp clink slicing through the laughter and chatter like a knife. Within seconds, the entire vineyard fell quiet again, 60-plus faces turning back toward the little wooden stage under the oak tree. He kept one arm locked around Courtney's waist, his palm spread proudly across the gentle swell hidden beneath her emerald dress, and broke into the widest, most triumphant grin I had ever seen on him. "Since everybody's in such a great mood today," he said, letting the suspense hang just long enough, "Courtney and I have one more announcement." He paused, milking it. "We're pregnant. First baby. Due right before Christmas." The place detonated. A wall of sound hit me from every direction at once. Cheers exploded like gunfire. People shot out of their chairs so fast some of them tipped backward. Aunt Diane let out an ear-piercing shriek and clutched Aunt Karen like she'd just won the lottery. Mom dropped her linen napkin, both hands flying to her mouth as tears sprang instantly. She bolted toward the stage, pearls swinging. Lauren screamed, actually screamed, threw her arms around Courtney and started jumping up and down so hard her heels sank into the grass. Diego pounded the table with both fists, silverware jumping. The cousins' table erupted into whistles and wolf calls. Someone popped a bottle of the 2019 Reserve Pinot Noir, and foam sprayed in a perfect arc over the front row. Strangers hugged strangers. Phones shot up in every direction, flashbulbs popping like paparazzi. Dad rose slowly from his seat at the head table glass, raised high eyes already glassy with emotion. "To the next generation of Shaws," he roared, voice cracking just a little. The toast rolled across the rows of golden vines like a tidal wave. Glasses crashed together in chaotic celebration. Someone started a Shaw, Shaw, Shaw chant, and half the vineyard joined in. The servers abandoned their trays to clap. Even the caterers in the back were grinning. Brandon stood in the center of it all, chest puffed out, drinking every second like it was oxygen. Then he turned, found me exactly where I'd been standing the entire afternoon, and locked eyes. He lifted his glass one final time and shouted over the dying cheers, making sure the very last row heard every word, 35 and still single. What a waste. The laughter came back twice as loud, fueled by champagne, family pride, and pure adrenaline. A couple of cousins echoed it. What a waste. Someone slapped the table in rhythm. A few people actually clapped, like it was the punchline of the year. Mom, still wiping happy tears for the baby, managed to call out in that syrupy tone she saves for public pity. "We just want you happy and settled, sweetheart." Lauren, one arm still draped over Courtney's shoulders, added with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Plenty of fish in the sea, Bellamy. Don't wait too much longer." Aunt Karen shook her head slowly, tragically. "The clock ticks for all of us, dear." Uncle Greg leaned toward the man beside him and muttered, just loud enough, "Careers don't push wheelchairs or change adult diapers." The entire table snorted into their wine. Dad set his glass down with a heavy, deliberate clunk that somehow carried over the noise. He took 4 measured steps toward me, stopped less than 6 feet away, and stared straight into my eyes. His voice dropped to that low, icy register he used in boardrooms when someone was about to lose their job. "You'll die alone, Bellamy," he said, calm, flat, and merciless. "No husband, no children, no family, just you and your drawings." The vineyard went dead silent. 60-plus people froze mid-motion, glasses hung in midair. Someone's phone slipped from their fingers and clattered on the wood. Even the breeze through the vines seemed to stop. You could have heard a grape hit the ground. Every single face pivoted toward me, waiting for the tears, the scream, the dramatic walkout. Anything that would give them the reaction they'd come for. I felt the weight of every stare, every judgment they'd carried about me for years, pressing down all at once. I didn't move a muscle. I just smiled slow and steady and glanced at my watch. 2:15 p.m. Right on the dot. I set my glass down on the nearest oak table with a soft, deliberate clink that somehow cut through the frozen silence. For the first time all afternoon I spoke. Actually, I said, letting my voice carry easily across the rows of vines. I've been waiting for the right moment to share a couple things. 60-plus heads swiveled in perfect unison. Phones dipped. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Dad's eyebrows climbed so high they nearly disappeared into his hairline. I kept my tone calm, almost casual, like I was talking about the weather. I'm the lead architect on the Portland International Airport expansion project. $3.2 billion contract, largest infrastructure job the state has ever seen. My name was on the cover of Architectural Digest 2 weeks ago. 8-figure salary this year, 7 figures every year before that. I let the numbers settle. Aunt Diane's mouth formed a perfect circle. Uncle Greg's glass stopped an inch from his lips. A cousin in the back actually whispered "holy shit" before his wife elbowed him. Brandon recovered first, forcing a laugh that cracked halfway through. "Congrats, sis." "Really? Money's awesome. Still doesn't change the fact that you go home to an empty bed." Lauren jumped in, immediately smirking over the rim of her champagne flute. "Exactly. All the magazine covers in the world don't tuck you in at night or ask how your day was." Mom pressed a manicured hand to her hard eyes, already glistening again. "We're so proud of the career, honey, truly. But when the lights go off in that big condo, it's still just you. That's what keeps us up at night." Dad folded his arms across his chest, nodding slowly like a judge delivering a final verdict. "Professional success is fine. Real success is people waiting for you at home." Aunt Karen leaned forward, voice dripping with pity. "Private jets don't push swings at the Park Bellamy." Aunt Diane chimed in right on cue. "Or hold your hand in the hospital." Uncle Greg muttered to the table beside him, loud enough for 3 rows to hear, "Blueprints don't change diapers or bring you soup when you're sick." Scattered chuckles rippled again, smaller than before, but still there, still sharp. I watched them all fall back into the exact same script they'd been reciting since I turned 30. Money can't buy happiness. Career women end up lonely. No amount of fame replaces a family. I let the laughter die naturally. Then I smiled, slow and genuine. "That's the funniest part," I said, taking one relaxed step forward. "I don't come home to an empty condo. Haven't for almost 7 years." Brandon rolled his eyes so hard I was surprised they didn't stick. "Here we go. The imaginary boyfriend defense." Lauren snorted. "Right." The cat finally learned to cook. Mom clasped her pearls. "Plants don't count, sweetheart. We've been over this." Dad shook his head, almost sad for me. Courtney shifted her weight, one hand still resting on her bump, looking uncomfortable for the first time all day. Aunt Karen sighed theatrically. "Denial is a powerful thing." Aunt Diane nodded. "Classic coping mechanism." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The sun warmed my shoulders, the air smelled like ripe grapes and oak barrels, and I had never felt more in control in my life. I glanced at my watch again. 2:16 p.m. Almost time. I looked straight at Brandon, then at Dad, then let my gaze sweep across every single face that had spent the afternoon judging me. "You keep calling it a waste?" I said quietly. "Funny. I stopped wasting my time on people who only see what they want to see a very long time ago." The vineyard stayed unnaturally quiet. No one laughed this time. Then the heavy wooden vineyard gate creaked open. Exactly 2:17 p.m. A tall man in a charcoal brioni suit stepped through, first tie, perfect shoes gleaming despite the gravel. Behind him walked a little boy, almost 7, dark hair, neatly combed navy blazer with gold buttons, khaki shorts, and brand new sneakers. A calm woman in simple black carrying a small leather backpack followed 2 steps back. The boy spotted me instantly. His entire face lit up like Christmas morning. "Mommy." He took off at full speed, weaving between the rows of vines like a guided missile, arms already wide, shoes kicking up tiny clouds of dust on the path. Every single conversation died in the same heartbeat. Benjamin slammed into me so hard my knees bent. I dropped down just in time to catch him as he threw his arms around my neck and squeezed with all his might. Mommy-Daddy said we had to be exactly on time, and we made it. He squealed loud enough for the back row to hear every word. I hugged him tight, breathing in that perfect mix of airplane air little boy shampoo and the faint trace of the gummy bears he wasn't supposed to have on the flight. Over his shoulder, I watched Alexander Grant walk toward us, unhurried, one hand casually in his pocket, the other holding the gate open for Elena Morales, our nanny, who flashed me the smallest, proudest smile. 60-plus people stood frozen like someone had hit pause on the entire universe. A crystal wine glass slipped from Aunt Karen's fingers and shattered on the oak table, red Pinot, splashing across the white linen in a perfect arc. Mom's mouth actually fell open. Her pearls stopped mid-swing. Dad's face drained of every drop of color beneath his golfer's tan. Brandon's microphone arm dropped like dead weight. The speaker let out an ugly electronic screech that echoed off the hills. Lauren's phone, still recording, tilted dangerously and almost hit the grass. Someone at the cousins' table whispered loud enough for half the vineyard. "Did that kid just call Bellamy mommy?" Another voice higher and panicked. "There's a man." And a nanny. "What the hell is happening?" Benjamin pulled back, beaming at the silent crowd like he'd been invited to perform on stage. "Hi, everybody," he announced, waving both hands wildly. "I'm Ben. This is my daddy, and this is Elena." More glasses hit tables. One rolled clean off the edge and exploded against the stone patio. Another tipped sideways and poured an entire flute of champagne straight into Uncle Greg's lap. He didn't even flinch. Courtney's hand flew to her own stomach, eyes wide as saucers. Alexander reached us, slid a possessive arm around my waist, and pressed a calm, deliberate kiss to my temple like we did this every weekend. "Sorry, we're cutting it close," he said, voice low and amused, perfectly audible to the front three tables. Traffic out of PDX was brutal, but we made it with 20 seconds to spare. Benjamin tugged my sleeve impatiently. "Mommy, can I have the sparkling apple juice now? You promised after the big surprise." I laughed softly and ruffled his hair. "Go ask Elena." She brought the special cups. He bolted back toward her sneakers, crunching loudly on the gravel. Alexander kept his arm around me and finally turned to face the sea of stunned faces. 60 pairs of eyes stared back, unblinking mouths open. You could have heard a single grape hit the dirt. Dad managed to croak one word. "Bellamy." Mom took one trembling step forward, then another, staring at Benjamin like he might disappear if she blinked. Brandon stood rooted on the stage, mouth opening and closing with zero sound. Lauren's phone finally slipped from her hand and landed face down in the grass with a soft thud. Aunt Diane clutched her chest so hard her necklace actually snapped, pearls scattering across the table. Uncle Greg sat soaked in champagne and still hadn't moved. I felt every single stare shift from shock to confusion to something that looked a lot like pure fear. Benjamin came running back with a plastic flute of sparkling cider, holding it high like an Olympic torch. Alexander gave the crowd a polite, devastatingly calm smile. "Stunning venue," he said conversationally. "Really sorry about all the broken glass. Hope nobody's hurt." And with that, the silence stretched one more excruciating, perfect second. I took a slow, deliberate breath and turned to face the entire crowd. "Everyone," I said, letting my voice carry without effort across the stunned vineyard, "meet my husband, Alexander Grant. Former Navy fighter pilot. He now owns Grant Airways' 37 aircraft private charter contracts from Seattle to D.C. and a few international routes most people have never heard of." Alexander gave the smallest, most courteous nod, the same one he uses when greeting senators. "And this," I continued placing my hand gently on top of Benjamin's dark hair, is our son, Benjamin Alexander Grant. He'll be 7 in 4 months. Mom let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob, and actually staggered 1 step sideways. Dad's face went from white to gray in seconds. I looked straight at Brandon first, then Lauren, then finally let my gaze rest on Mom and Dad. For 8 full years I said every word measured. Not one of you ever asked a real question about my life. Not once. You saw what you wanted to see, a single lonely career woman, because that story was convenient. You never asked who waited for me at home. You never asked why I sometimes vanished for weeks at a time. You never asked why I stopped coming to family holidays after I turned 27. You never asked why my Christmas cards were always signed only with my name. Brandon opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. We just thought. You didn't think I cut in calm and ice cold. You assumed. And every time you assumed, you reminded me exactly why I stopped sharing. Alexander spoke next. Voice, smooth, deep, and perfectly polite, the kind that makes boardrooms go quiet. We got married 8 years ago, he said, sliding his arm around my waist again. Simple ceremony at the King County Courthouse in downtown Seattle. 2 close friends as witnesses. Bellamy wore a knee-length white dress she found in a boutique on Capitol Hill. I was still on active duty, fresh off a carrier deployment. We decided to keep it private until the timing felt right. Turns out the timing never felt right until today. He smiled down at Benjamin, who was now swinging my hand back and forth like a pendulum. Ben arrived 11 months later, Alexander continued. Best surprise we ever planned for. He was born at Naval Hospital Bremerton. I cut the cord while still in uniform. Benjamin, completely unaware he was standing in the middle of a family earthquake, looked up at the silent crowd and announced at full volume, Daddy has his own airplanes. Lots and lots. We flew here on the biggest one. It has beds and a shower and everything. And last month we went to Disneyland on it and Mickey came on board. Aunt Diane actually whimpered and clutched her broken necklace. Uncle Greg's champagne-soaked pants remained forgotten. Mom took 2 more shaky steps forward, tears streaming freely now, mascara starting to run. Bellamy. A grandson. She whispered, voice breaking. You have a son? My grandson. Dad's voice came out hoarse. 8 years. Bellamy. 8 whole years. I met his eyes without flinching. 8 Thanksgivings, I said. 8 Christmases. 8 birthdays. 8 firsts you never knew about, because every time I walked into a room, you reminded me I was failing at the only thing that apparently mattered to this family. Brandon tried again, quieter, almost pleading. We didn't mean it like that. You did, I said simply. Every single time you said it, you meant it. Alexander's grip on my waist tightened just enough to remind me he was right there. Lauren finally retrieved her phone from the grass hand, shaking so badly she almost dropped it again. Courtney stood frozen, one protective hand still on her own bump, looking like someone had just told her the sky was green. I looked around at every face that had spent the afternoon pitying me, lecturing me, writing my story without ever asking for the real one. 8 years of choosing peace over their approval. 8 years of building a life so full it never needed their validation. I felt nothing but absolute calm. Mom reached out first, tears streaming down both cheeks, hands shaking in the air toward Benjamin like he was made of glass. Can I, please, can I just hold my grandson once, she begged, voice breaking on every syllable. Dad was right beside her, eyes, red and wet, arms already opening wide. Bellamy, honey, we're so sorry. We didn't know. Let us hug him. Let us make this right. Please. Brandon stumbled down the 2 steps from the little stage microphone, abandoned face blotchy and pale. Sis. Bellamy. I swear I didn't know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was an idiot. Please forgive me. Lauren was openly crying now, mascara running in black rivers. We were horrible. All of us. We judged you and we were wrong. Please don't punish the baby for our stupidity." Aunt Diane and Aunt Karen clutched each other, sobbing into each other's shoulders. Uncle Greg stood up, champagne-soaked pants, forgotten mouth, working soundlessly. Courtney stood frozen, one protective hand on her own bumped tears, sliding silently down her face. The entire vineyard had gone from stunned silence to desperate, messy pleading. I looked at every single one of them faces that had spent the afternoon telling me I would die alone, and felt nothing but cold, clear certainty. I stepped forward one deliberate pace. Alexander's arm still steady around my waist, Benjamin pressed safely against my side. Last month, I said voice flat calm and absolutely final. I sat down with my estate attorney and signed a complete revision of my will and revocable trust. Every member of the Shaw family has been removed as beneficiaries, 100%. My personal estate, my company, equity, my investment accounts. The Lake Oswego house, everything now goes exclusively to Alexander, to Benjamin, and to the Grant Family Foundation we set up years ago. Mom's hands dropped like stones. Dad's arms fell to his sides. Brandon made a strangled noise in his throat. I continued without pausing. I have already blocked every phone number, every email address, every social media account any of you have ever used. Your names are on a permanent no-contact list with our security team, our pilot's Elena Benjamin School, and every property we own. You will never be able to reach us again. Not me, not my husband, not my son. Dad found his voice raw and desperate. "Bellamy, you can't do this. He's our blood, our only grandson." I looked him dead in the eye. "Blood didn't stop you from announcing to 60 people that your daughter would die alone and unloved," I said. "Blood didn't make you pick up the phone once in 8 years to ask if I was happy. Blood doesn't get to rewrite history just because the truth finally walked through the gate." Mom collapsed into the nearest chair, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Brandon took 2 steps toward me, palms open in surrender. "We'll change. We'll do anything. Therapy, whatever you want. Please don't take him away from us." Lauren dropped to her knees in the grass, still clutching her phone. "He's our nephew. Please." I looked down at Benjamin, who was watching the crying adults with wide, worried eyes. I crouched to his level, smoothed his hair, and gave him the only warm smile I'd worn all day. "Ready to go home, sweetheart?" He nodded immediately. "Can we stop for ice cream on the way to the plane?" Alexander's mouth curved. Double scoop. I took Benjamin's small hand in mine, and turned my back on every person who used to be my family. We walked away together, Alexander on my left, Benjamin on my right, Elena falling in quietly behind us, straight down the gravel path between the rows of golden vines. Behind us, Mom's broken wail rose above everything else. Dad called my name, once voice cracking. Brandon shouted Bellamy, "Wait," and started running, but Alexander simply shifted slightly, blocking the path without even looking back. I never turned around. Not once. The last thing I heard as we disappeared through the vineyard gate was the sound of 60 people realizing all at once that some doors close forever. 3 months later. Brandon was fired the same week Grant Airways terminated every single legal contract with his firm. Overnight, the downtown Portland office lost its biggest client, $42 million a year in billable work gone. The partners called an emergency meeting and voted unanimously. Brandon packed his office in 2 cardboard boxes and hasn't found another job since. Courtney delivered their son in October, but the West Lynn mansion already has a for sale sign in the yard. They're moving into a 2-bedroom rental 20 minutes farther out. Tesla traded in for a used Honda. Mom and Dad rattle around the 5-bedroom house in Lake Oswego alone. The infinity pool parties never happened. The boat Dad promised Brandon still sits shrink-wrapped at the marina. They eat dinner at 5:30 p.m. in front of the television because the dining table feels too big now. Mom keeps setting an extra place out of habit, then quietly removes it when no one comes. Lauren's kids ask why Aunt Bellamy stopped sending birthday cards. She has no answer. Meanwhile, Alexander Benjamin and I live in the new house on the north shore of Lake Washington. 10,000 square feet floor-to-ceiling glass, a dock long enough for the Gulf Stream's float plane when we feel like flying ourselves to Friday Harbor for lunch. Benjamin starts first grade at the little private school 5 minutes away. His best friend's dad owns the Seahawks, but Ben still thinks our planes are cooler. On weekends, we disappear. Sometimes we're in Aspen before the coffee gets cold. Sometimes we're on the beach in Maui watching the sun come up. Benjamin falls asleep on the couch between us every Sunday night, exhausted from whatever adventure we picked that week, clutching the stuffed whale Alexander won for him at Disneyland Paris last month. I still run the airport expansion. The terminal opens next fall. My name is already carved into the cornerstone. And every single day I wake up to the sound of my son laughing and my husband making pancakes in the shape of airplanes. Family isn't blood. Family is the people who show up, who ask the real questions, who love you, even when you're quiet about the details. The rest, they get what they gave. Nothing. End of story.